As you got into skydiving, your reputation in skydiving has long been kind of the guru. People come to you for advice and inspiration and all this stuff, but you're kind of one of the originals, one of the OGs that were doing this. Because back in the day, it was maybe you got lucky and you had a mentor as a really kick-ass instructor that helped bring you along. But you're one of the first that I remember hearing about that wasn't just doing that at a local drop zone. You were traveling to teach people at the time really kind of revolutionary ideas on how to think about what we were doing. And get it kind of out of the box of just automatic and start thinking about it. How did where did you transition in the sport to going, something, I've got a lot to offer that doesn't necessarily tie into the normal AFF program?
Right.
How did you decide it's time to start spreading the word?
Well, I mean, I made a transition from being a young, quite young drop zone owner in Vermont, doing the standard stuff, AFF and tandem, but I was doing it in a different way. I was training my tandems for 2 to 4 hours, in horizontal hanging harnesses, the Gregory trainer. I would sit down and draw vectors on the board, and I'd talk about navigation and patterns. And in that perspective alone, that number one, that skydivers are smart, skydiving students are smart. And if you just take the time and you give them more information, they'll do better and they'll come back more.
Sure.
They'll become skydivers because you treat them like skydivers and not like skydiving students. So that was pivotal in a shifting of perspective. And I was validated that my contemplative and compassionate approach was working better than the old tough military, just because I said it means you're now responsible for it.
Right.
That old command style teaching, I kind of was throwing it away, and I was proven that I was right. And so that's when I had I got into paragliding, and I had an accident.
Okay.
And this was the shift for me. I took a collapse, and this is back in the days when the paragliders weren't very safe. It's obviously still not perfectly safe, but it is far better than it was.
Right.
And I was all busted up, and I was forced to really take a closer look at the internal mechanisms of fear, the internal mechanisms of visualization, and that becoming a path to a specific reality. And so in the process of recovery, it deepened me. I did more research into these psychology subjects and relevance of meditation, in particular, to this stuff. And so when I started getting back into the sport, I was down in Z Hills. I got a job with Tony Uragallo. I came up with a new design for parachutes, this one-way valve system called airlocks, and a flying technique to reduce the risks in turbulence, utilizing roll axis to initiate turns using the harness with a loosened chest strap. This was kind of a big deal, and it was new.
Oh, it's groundbreaking.
To fly coordinated turns. And that's where it all started to kick in on a larger scale, because, of course, Tony and I were competing, the X Games and all that, and people knew our names. They knew our names. And so we'd show up at a boogie or whatever and do some free fly coaching. And then
now for those that are listening that don't know your specific history, you're competing in the X Games. What was the discipline?
Free flying.
Okay.
That was my game. We had lots of folks that were doing the sky surfing, and then we had people doing the free flying, and a couple that doing a crossover, doing both. Olaf did.
Yeah.
He was one of the only ones, actually.
Yeah, I talked to him about it, and we had a good giggle about him having his board cutaway handle sticking out of the fly of his blue jeans.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually found my old sky surfing suit just recently, a goofy looking. It was a sit suit back in those days.
Yep.
But yeah, the sport was sort of escalating in these new directions, and people wanted to know how to do it. And even before that, you had Norman Kent that was shooting Mike Michigan. He was shooting Deanna, his wife, Deanna Kent, doing crazy wild freestyle stuff that we were like, what's that all about? That's what really brought it in to the limelight. To me, it was before X Games. It was Roger Nelson, freak flying. that was the big shift. But again, these guys weren't traveling around teaching seminars as much as we were, as far as I know. And so we were getting all these invites because of ESPN. That
Sure.
they knew our names. And so I'd fly in and I'd say, well, let's talk about sit flying. Now, sit flying is not that easy, especially if
Hmm.
all you've done is lay on your belly. Gus Wing always used to say, belly flying's cool if it's all you can do. and and it does require us to collect our emotions and stop moving around, hold
Sure.
still. I always say still but not stiff. To bring in the idea of meditating before you leave the plane and holding that feeling as you're getting up and moving to the door and exiting the plane smooth and happy and chill. Um, call it contemplative skydiving, I guess.
Mm.
That's where it started to really blossom because nothing else was working when I was teaching the students. Like, you hold this body position, and they would spin so fast. They'd tumble and spin and go all over the place, and their eyes would be bloodshot, and they would have their shoes falling off in the spins or whatever. I had to pull in everything that I could
Sure.
think of to do a better job of teaching. So I think if you were to really boil it down, my teaching method was sculpted by necessity. I became the kind of teacher that I am because nothing else worked as well.
Sure. Well, it's funny too because the style with which you teach and kind of the mantra, if I can use that word, the mentality of especially free flying as it really started to kick off from that time frame, very much became about relax, loose, easy, very comfortable,
Yeah.
and almost a hippie mentality. Very
Hell yeah.
much and for a long time, especially free flying really echoed that hippie mentality, not just in the flying, but in the vibe on the ground,
Yeah.
the attitudes, the jumpsuits, the rigs, everything just
Creative, right? Colorful,
absolutely.
creative, acceptant of weirdness. That we
Yeah.
were the weird ones. Everybody else was wearing black jumpsuits with their big grippers and their astronaut helmets. And
Oh yeah.
they'd yell at each other in the landing area. Oh, you're supposed to dock here, and you went low. And we were kind of in a no fail mentality. We'd go up, we'd fly around, we'd have fun. I saw you.
Oh yeah.
I
No,
didn't touch you, but I saw
some of my favorite jumps were complete clusterfucks.
you.
Absolutely nothing went like we planned, but it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And I never understood. I did the '98 Nationals, and I was shooting video for sky surfing, and the juxtaposition between myself, my partner, Craig and Tanya O'Brien, Omar was on board, and then Arizona Airspeed was in the back, and it was the plane was divided right down the middle, not
Yeah.
just in discipline, but in mentality. And it
Oh,
was so, I'd never had it shoved in my face quite like that before. And I liked my side of the plane a lot better.
I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. And I gotta remember, I'm also a four-way guy. I
Yeah,
came from that background. The
sure.
called Team Vermont. It was Ole Thompson, Terry Mayer, it was his wife, and Bob Moore. And we were good. We were serious about it. Jack Jeffries and Kirk Werner were coaching us. Sully Williams. Um, and we were on our way, to being that version of a
Sure.
skydiver. And that's when my accident happened. So that was the turning point for my career. So I was kind of forced into this other
Sure.
way of doing it because I just, at least for a while there, I couldn't do the four-way. I just wasn't
Yeah.
able.
And there were a few people from that side of the fence, so to speak, and I hate to separate it, but a few guys, somebody like Craig Girard is a huge example of somebody that can flip back and forth between both.
Yes.
Never have I met such an easygoing person. And when he and I talked on the podcast, he's just very relaxed and loose about the entire sport, and that just happened to be what he was excelling at in the time. But he'll also go flick off some building, having a blast, and there, at least back then, there didn't seem to be that many people that were like that. So as you and a few guys like you were coming out that way, it was a pretty novel approach to skydiving. It really was.
Yeah, we were the weird ones for sure. But the positive attitude is contagious.
Oh yeah.
It just tastes better. You know what I mean? It's just I understand that you maybe have specific goals of wanting to be on big ways or win medals or turn more points. Great, that's awesome. Just don't lose the essential essence of what it is to be a skydiver. That this is
Sure.
for fun. This
Oh
is
yeah.
for connection with other people, for that camaraderie. And if you take it too seriously to the point where you're getting angry, you're not doing it right.
Oh yeah. Well, I remember listening to a four-way team getting an argument because something hadn't gone quite right, and one of them screamed something along the lines, "Let's just turn off our cypresses and fucking go in if we don't get the last point." What?
Yeah.
What? That's no.
Okay.
Come on.
Other sports becking, dude.
Yeah.
You've lost the theme. Yeah, I get it. And so even then, people can have these awakenings where they just say, "Enough! I don't have the energy anymore flowing into me to want to do this." And either
Right.
they drop out, or they have a refreshed perspective, a new beginning, where they say, maybe I'll put on one of those, stupid free fly suits, or maybe I'll put on one of those goofy dresses, the wingsuits,
Sure.
and try that, or whatever. Dare to be a student, dare
Oh
to
yeah.
suck again at something novel, and sort of renew that spark.
Well, that's the great thing about skydiving specifically. My way to cope with the burnout that I eventually hit as a full-time tandem instructor was to take about a 4-year break. And when I did start jumping again, I started jumping because a buddy of mine asked me to go on a load, and the idea of it made me nervous again. And I got butterflies, and
Yeah.
so I became a born-again fun jumper that sucks at almost everything he tries lovingly. I'm
Well,
never going to be
I
the
get it.
never going to be the greatest free flyer. I'm never going to be the greatest swooper, and I enjoy that fact because it gives me something to aspire to and something to learn. And then, of course, you watch the kids in the damn wind tunnel now, and I can be outflown by a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
So humble is just a normal word for me nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. It's do we really need to be the best? The ego needs that, right?
Sure.
The vulnerable self that doesn't actually exist, that it's an illusion that we create, and it's a cultural voice within us, but it's not real. To me, real is who we are in the present moment, our awareness.
Sure.
The joy of an exit gone well, gone badly, whatever it is, where you're in this moment, and that first 1 second or so as you're going, you're so hyper aware of every little detail that's going on. To me, that's aliveness,
Oh, absolutely.
and that's not
Well,
my ego at all. That's part of that.
exactly. Well, and I hate to see it, but you watch people struggling to hit that number one position, which, I mean, let's face it, most people are never going to be the best. Or if they are, it's such a fleeting moment to spend so much time suffering without enjoyment to try and reach this one little goal that chances are is going to be pretty anticlimactic when it's done. The people that I've seen enjoy being, upwards of the best are the ones that are also having just a shitload of fun.
Right.
That's one of the things that always drew me to skydiving, and swoopers nowadays are a great example of this. Is they're all rooting for each other.
Yes.
I mean, sure, they want to be on top of the podium, but
Mhm.
you'll watch, the freestyle competitions, and the guys that are in the competition are on the sidelines as fans, and
Yes.
that says volumes.
Yes. 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 Absolutely. It was the same way in the X Games. Everybody was rooting for everybody else.
Yeah,
And that was one of the first times that I'd ever done that. Because like ski racing, you would watch everybody else ski, and there's an aspect of your experience like, wow, that guy's really good. That's really beautiful. And then there's this other voice that says, oh man, I hope he falls.
right.
I hope he doesn't beat me. I hope he skids out on this turn and loses some speed. And that's the ego voice. But what if this was all of us together rooting for the ultimate performance?
Oh yeah,
Like when I watch a football game where I don't care who wins because I don't have an interest in the teams, I root for the great play.
yes,
For the wonderful catch, the beautiful running play where he just dodges and flips over somebody and keeps on going. I'm rooting almost for the ball. You know what I mean?
sure,
It's so. And so, what if we were to take that approach to skydiving, and still reach for high performance, reach for our best possible performance right now, and everybody else's also, to see
sure.
great skydiving, to root for great skydiving. We don't have to give up our dreams of awesomeness as we dissolve our egos at all. We don't
Sure.
have to give up those dreams, and that's what pushes the sport forward. All aspects of it.
Absolutely. Well, and I always fall back to the general public, the majority, the vast majority of the world that has nothing to do with skydiving. They think we're all badass nuts.
Yep.
You know, I mean, we're the a very, very small collective of people pushing to be the best of a very small group of people, when the rest of the world is all like, oh, you guys are all ready.
Yeah, you're all nuts. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they don't make a distinction, do they,
No.
between somebody who's a world champion and somebody who just, jumps and sort of lands somewhere on the drop zone.
Oh yeah.
Close enough, The that perspective from I don't know. I think it might be helpful for us to see ourselves through the eyes of a woofo every once in a while.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know if you get this feeling. It's something that kicked in sometime this year, where I was walking in from a jump, and I don't remember the context exactly. I was in Norway, and looking at all the other people. I think it was an in-hop, actually, right? So you jump into new places. And I'm looking around, and like all these skydivers with their parachutes over their shoulders, and they're stowing their toggles and turning off their GoPros. And I just had these words in my mind come out real loud. We are so freaking cool. and I don't mean that in an ego way. I mean it in like goosebumps. Like, look where we are. Like, I'm sure that Armstrong walking on the moon was like, holy fuck.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Look where we are. And it's that appreciation, I think, that keeps us in the sport. It's not the medals. It's not the number of points. It's not the next benchmark or the next license. It's the awareness in this moment that this is worthwhile.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure most jump pilots that I know that are jumpers as well are the same. Every phone that I've had that's been capable of taking pictures is full of pictures of me flying over a drop zone, whatever drop zone it may be. I have now, one of the new iPhones, and it's got 10,000 pictures, and I guarantee 5,000 of those at least are pictures from the air or on the ground of something going on at skydiving, because yeah, you just have to go, holy shit, and that aspect is bled through so many different parts of my life. I was lucky enough just to do a hiking tour through Nepal and go up to base camp as well. And the appreciation.
By the way, we're going to talk about this because I want to do that. Maybe after the show, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of those things where, because I've learned over so many years, I was able to sit down where I was and go, holy shit.
Yeah.
And look around and really soak in where I was and what I was seeing. And it's because I do that almost every day. I mean, and who gets to do that? I don't know any bankers that take pictures of the counter they work at every day. This is.
Yeah, they could if they wanted to see it from a different perspective, where holy crap, I'm above ground. My heart is beating. There's all this blood going through my body, distributing, the wealth of the food that I've eaten and getting rid of the stuff that I don't want. And everything is still, my eyes work. I can see stuff. Just I'm capable of perceiving time just the act of being alive.
Oh, yeah.
Is a miracle, and maybe it takes people a near-death experience to get to that. Maybe I think for most people that have had a life-altering epiphany that makes their the goosebumps come up just in normal moments. We're like, oh my God, I'm alive. Here I am, and it's an opportunity to breathe in another breath of air. Maybe that's the answer that adventure sports brings to us, these moments of near-death experiences where we appreciate being alive.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm sitting at home on a long, boring, rainy day when I've got nothing to do but sit on the couch and watch shitty Netflix, and I'm not particularly thrilled with the day. Still, at some point during that day, I'll go, well, it gets a whole lot worse than this. And I get to look forward to more experiences, and I'll just savor what I've got right now, because I've had much worse days than this. And that's an appreciation that I would not have had if it weren't for experiences like this.
Sure. Yeah. Contrast. Yeah, absolutely. Contrast can help us to appreciate moments that could appear mundane that aren't.
Sure.
You can make a skydive where it's like, yeah, whatever. I'm just doing a solo. It's just a solo. Well, but what if this potentially, if you shifted your focus, was an educational solo where you tried something new that you've never done before and you learned something. What if
Sure.
in this skydive you woke up in free fall? You really like were in this moment, wide awake, super consciousness, euphoric super consciousness right now.
Sure.
What if that happened right now? What if this was the best jump of your life?
Okay, I think we're in business. Right on. Cool. So, welcome to Casual Chat Live. I am Brian Germain, and I have one of the best guests. I'm so